Hi everyone, it's good to have you back for another chess lesson. So today I'm going to finish our conversation on checkmating with pieces. So previously I talked about checkmating with the queen, checkmating with the rook, and checkmating with the two bishops. And today I'm going to talk about the most difficult one of them all, which is checkmating with a knight and a bishop. Okay, now before we start, let me be honest with you and tell you that this doesn't happen a whole lot in chess games. If you play 1,000 games, you might see this position once. However, it is important to know how to deliver a checkmate in this position, because if you reach this position and you already have a decisive advantage, you want to be able to eke out victory, right? You want to convert that into a point. So you need to know how to deliver a checkmate in this position. The other reason it's good to know this is that it tells you a lot and teaches you a lot about restricting your opponent's space and using a space to your advantage. So that's what we're going to go over today. And you'll notice that I am back on the Lee Chess platform. Lee Chess has a lot of good practices for this checkmate. So if you don't have a training partner, it would be a good place to go to practice what I will go over today. This is a checkmate I'm delivering to Stockfish, and I have already done this at home, and I'm just showing you the moves for this video. Okay, so before we start, let me tell you the basics behind this checkmate. So you'll notice in this position, white has a bishop and a knight. Now this bishop is a light squared bishop, right? So what I want to do in this checkmate is to restrict black's space to one of the corners of the board and then deliver the checkmate, right? I cannot take black to deliver checkmate to either one of these corners in A1 or H8. I can only do that in H1 or A8, and that's because I have a light squared bishop. So I have to take black to the light squares, okay? Now, the way we do this is that we create multiple triangles and we restrict black inside those triangles. So this is the first triangle. This is the biggest of the three triangles I will show you. So first, I want to restrict black into this triangle, and you could draw a similar triangle on this side of the board. It would be essentially the same thing. And then after you do this, you want to make this triangle smaller and take black into the second triangle. So this would be the second triangle. And finally, we will take black into the smallest triangle. And here, here we will deliver a checkmate inside this smallest triangle. Okay, so now if you want to create this biggest triangle, let's say, what you can do is to use your bishop to control this diagonal, right? The rest of them, the dark squares, you have to control with your knight and your king, okay? The same thing goes about all the other diagonals. So let's just start this. I will first do a few preliminary moves to bring my pieces to the center, and then you'll see that I'll quickly try to restrict black into this first triangle. Now, if black is a smart, and trust me, Stockfish is a smart, they will try to go to this dark square, either H8 or A1. In this case, the mate I'm delivering, black's king goes to H8. And so you have to be able to push them out of this position. And the way you do that is with a knight check. So let's go ahead and see that. So here I'm just making a few moves to bring my pieces to the center. And you'll see that I try to use my king to restrict black as much as possible. And black is trying to stay on the side of the board where there is a dark square, which is the H8 square, right? So now I'll bring my knight in, and now here I can no longer move my king further forward because I already have these two squares covered with my bishop and my knight. So if I move my king further forward to f6 or g6, I will take this away, and that will end up in a stalemate. You don't want a stalemate when you're a knight and a bishop up. So what I have to do here is to just make a check. Black comes to g7. They still have the g7 and h7 squares to stay on this side. So I'm going to try to take those away. I just make a waiting move, and now I have taken both of these away with my king. So now black has to go to f8, and what I will do is to move my bishop back, and then I will move my knight back. And so here I have essentially made the first triangle. So see that I am controlling this first diagonal with my bishop, and the dark squares here I am controlling with my king, right? Even if I only control this side of this board with my king, black can still not escape from this other side, because notice that all of these squares are protected. So black cannot actually get away from here, right? So all of these squares are protected. So as long as I have this side protected with my king, black cannot get away from here, okay? So now I have black in the first triangle. So now I'm going to try to invade their space with the king and make them more limited. So I'm just taking space away from black's king. And so as soon as they're out of reach of this a4 square, I am able to move the bishop to a4. So now I have the second triangle that I'm making, right? So if you think about this triangle now, I have all of the white squares covered with my bishop. I do not have the c7 and the d8 square covered, right? So that is the job of my knight. So if I could bring my knight here, then it would control both of these squares, right? So that's what I'm going to try to do next. So I'll go knight f4, and then I'll come here. So now I am covering this square, all of these, this diagonal, all of these are covered with my bishop, and now these are covered by my knight. So I took 3 out of the 4 black squares out of black's hand. So the only place they can go is a5, and I will just move my bishop away. So they can only go back and forth here. So black is now comfortable because they can go to this a5 square thinking that I cannot push them away, right? So the way I have to push them away is to give a knight, to use my knight to give a check, right? So what I'll do here is exactly that. I'll move my knight down. When black comes back up, then I'll give them a check. Okay, of course, I do not want to bring my knight here to c6. If I do that and give them a check, black will just run away from here, right? So I want to give a check from b7. Now, if I give a check, black goes down. I take my king down, and now I have covered all of the squares here. I'm not worried about black moving out from this side, so black goes down. I can again cover all these squares with my king and my knight. So now black goes down, and here I can make the last triangle. So now I'm controlling the last triangle with my bishop. When black comes back, I can just move the bishop back up to a6 and then give a check at b7 and deliver the checkmate. Okay, so all of these squares are covered. Black is checkmate. Okay, so it's really as simple as that. It will probably need some practice, but let's go back to some key positions and kind of summarize this. So this is what I would call the first key position. I am here and I have taken g7 and h7 out of black's king, and they cannot go there. And now when they go to f8, note that I went back down to b3, right? I needed to move my bishop, but the reason I didn't go to a2, for example, is because I want to be able to control this square here. So I stay here at a3, so at b3, so that I can control a4. And then later I will control b4 with my knight. So that is why I moved the bishop to b3, right? The second critical position is here when I am limiting black to the second triangle. And remember here now, my knight is not really doing much because knight here can control the b4 and c5 squares. I do not need control of either one of those because my king can already do that, right? What I really need to control is these two. So I'm going to make the seemingly irrelevant move, which is knight f4, but that allows me to bring knight to e6, and then I will be able to control these two squares with the knight, and this square with the king, and then the rest of them I can control with the bishop, right? So all of these are now controlled. And then finally, the last key position is here when black can, let me show you from here, when black can just go back and forth between a6 and a5. And what I will use to move them away from a5 is this knight and the knight check that I can give on b7. Again, remember, I don't want the knight to go to c6 because if I give a check here, then black can go to a5 and then to a4, and then they will escape from here, right? I want to be able to give the check at b7. Then when they go down, I can limit the rest of their squares, and then eventually just limit them to the final square, to the final triangle. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I think you might need some practice on this. Like I said, leeches would be a good place to go. If you have a training partner, that would be a great practice as well. I hope you liked this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll be back with another video and see you soon. Thanks.